Raw was excellent. Thought it was actually really, really good. Love the Beth Phoenix, Randy Orton stuff. Feels like they've got this build done the right way, you know? WWE, we give them a lot of stick. And we say that, oh, fuck's sake, here we go again. Oh, they've done this, they've done that. Ultimately, I feel like they've done this angle justice so far. I think Randy Orton comes across so well, so powerful in this role as this evil, dastardly heel. But there's also like this. I love the conversation. I loved the heel nonsense with Beth Phoenix saying to her, you know, Edge is now at home because of me, because of what I did. Edge can now be a father. Edge can be a husband, and you're the one who's in the wrong because you enabled him. This kind of sick, demented, twisted turn that Randy Orton has taken, and he genuinely believes he's like almost like a messiah, a good messiah, not a bad one like Seth Rollins. And ultimately it just works. It does. It really works. And Raw overall I thought was excellent. I think Raw has been really good. A lot of people I see shitting on Raw and you know, it's Raw, it's crap, and it's not like NXT, and it may not be as good wrestling wise as NXT, but I actually think the storylines have been great. Really enjoyed the Street Profits winning the tag titles. Bit obvious when it's, you know, their last chance and they bill it as a last chance, but still a great match. I think the Street Profits deserve those tag titles. It's lovely to see tag titles on an actual tag team as well, and ultimately frees up Seth Rollins and Murphy, not Buddy Murphy, just Murphy now, to do something else. Bit gutted for Murphy ultimately, because, you know, he kind of, it was nice to see him with a belt, and I feel like he's got so much potential, and he's probably going to end up being thrown by the wayside. That's just the way WWE is with smaller cruiserweight style guys, even if he is, you know, built like a brick shithouse. But yeah, no, I enjoyed Raw. Thought it was good. Loving the Latin demographic stuff again. I've always mentioned, especially when Steve's been on this podcast and anyone else who I've spoken to about wrestling in general, the Latin demographic is so good right now. From Mexico to Puerto Rico, there is representation across the board, and we saw this wonderful tag match. Rey Mysterio and Humberto Carrillo versus Angel Garza and Andrade with Zelina Vega at ringside. It worked. It absolutely works. And they gave him so much time as well. They went out, I think they were out there a good 15-20 minutes that match went. And that is the kind of match you want. There's no excuse when you got a 3-hour Raw not to have a top quality match every week. And ultimately this was fantastic. And I loved the stuff with Drew McIntyre and Brock Lesnar, because it was really simple. We always talk about less is more in the wrestling business, and this was fantastic. It was so simple. Lesnar comes out with Paul Heyman. They talk trash. Paul Heyman calls Drew McIntyre a big bitch, which I thought was great. Paul Heyman on fire on the microphone again, which is lovely, because there was a small time period where he kind of lost his way a little bit. Drew McIntyre comes out, Claymore kick, boom. You know, it was phenomenal. Does it again a couple of times on the entranceway. Absolutely amazing. Really good energy and a really good piece of imagery. This is the kind of stuff you want for a WrestleMania build. You know, you want it to feel like Rock Austin. You want material. You want clashes beforehand. You want to tell a story. I remember when Reigns took on Brock Lesnar, and they had the little tug of war. I think it was going into WrestleMania 31, and they had that stupid tug of war over the belt on Raw, where it's just like, no, it's my belt, man. It's just fucking tragic. And ultimately, the reason it was tragic was because there was just nothing there. That was like the one thing, and that was obviously because Brock Lesnar just, you know, wasn't turning up. He was full on mercenary mode at that time, and still harboured his love for UFC. But Lesnar is really putting in more of a shift now. Ultimately, he's still not working obviously as hard as the other guys, but he doesn't have to. He's an attraction, you know. And I will say this, Lesnar seems to be there at least every other week, if not every week, and I think that works well for the product. And I'm enjoying Raw. Raw has actually been bloody brilliant since the Royal Rumble, so credit to them. And obviously WWE Chamber this Sunday. Not too many matches announced yet, which is very frustrating, especially from our perspective, because obviously PvP this weekend, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll discuss that at the end of the podcast. But I'm looking forward to Chamber, I must admit. Not so much WrestleMania, and I'll discuss why after I wrap things up. But let's move on to last night, shall we? NXT, fantastic. 2 cage matches. My one gripe is I felt the women should have finished up. And I know that a lot of people will say, well, you know, look what Velveteen Dream did when he assaulted Adam Cole and all that stuff. And that was great. I love that stuff. And, you know, it is catch-22. But I think the women deserve the main event. Ultimately, I think that Dakota Kai versus Tegan Nox is a far more intriguing rivalry than Roderick Strong versus Velveteen Dream, simply because it's had the time. Velveteen Dream and Roderick Strong was kind of pretty much built out of a few weeks. I know that they kind of broke his back, so to speak, and that's what put him out, but it wasn't that big a storyline going on between Undisputed Era and Velveteen Dream when he got injured. And I just felt that Dakota Kai and Tegan Nox really had that blood feud about it. Great cage match, though. Really delivered. Love that as an opener. And ultimately, I thought NXT was really good this week. Me and Steve, especially from the last 2 or 3 weeks, have said that it feels like it's in a holding pattern and it could do more. And it delivered this week. Excellent. Really love both cage matches. Love the fact Cameron Grimes seems to be next in line for an opportunity against Keith Lee. I believe he's facing him next week for the North American title. That makes sense. You know, the way you like it, you know, whether you like it or not, Cameron Grimes is a superb athlete. He's a great character as well. He's got real potential on the Raw or SmackDown brands as well, which is lovely to see, because you can't say that about everyone in NXT. Although they're all amazing athletes and amazing wrestlers, not all of them have characters that, for me, work on a larger format. And I just loved NXT overall this week. I thought it really delivered. Ultimately, love both cage matches. Love the Cameron Grimes heat. Love the fact that GYV jumped the Broserweights from behind. Gotta say, Fort Riddle's promo was subpar again. I know this is going to cop me a lot of heat and you're going to lose your mind, but I just don't think he's very good on the mic. And that's fine, because he's a world-class wrestler, there's no question about that. But I hate the character, just says bro a lot and stallion and talks really slowly because he's out of joint. I just think, whatever, mate. Like, I'm sure a lot of people relate to that because, you know, they smoke weed or whatever, and that's cool, man. It's 420, it's a liberal world, but it's not really for me. And yeah, I'm not feeling the gimmick. And ultimately as well, I love Pete Dunne. You know, being British, obviously, I watch so much of Pete Dunne, and I think Pete Dunne is genuinely one of the best wrestlers in the world, inside out. And I just think he's a little bit wasted in this opportunity. Wasted being an awkward turn of phrase when you consider Matt Riddle is probably off his tits. Yeah, I mean, hey, he's still a lot better than Goldberg, I'll say that much. So maybe you want to improve your stock with me by attacking Goldberg at WrestleMania, Matt Riddle. I'd be all for that. But yeah, NXT, really good, really delivered. Love the imagery at the end, actually. Really like the idea of Velveteen Dream drawing Adam Cole in and then, you know, using Roderick Strong as a device to almost get at Adam Cole. It's very smart storytelling. However, it's a bit dumb as well, because now we're sort of saying, right, Velveteen Dream gets a shot at, you know, TakeOver Tampa. I don't think that's a good idea. I think you've left very little time. I think, 4 weeks away from WrestleMania, and we're starting this rivalry now? Not enough for me. Would have liked more time. And ultimately, one of the big problems that stems from that as well is the fact that he still lost the match. So what we're saying is, he gave the match away, therefore he's entitled to a title match. NXT TakeOver? Not for me, and I don't think he should win either. Now, I've seen a lot of people saying, like, oh, give Velveteen Dream the belt, he should take over the company. That's fine, I absolutely agree with that, just not now. I hate this rapid shoehorn mentality of, quick, get the guy in there, he's got to have the belt, he's got to have everything, we're going to have it now. Wrestling fans, fucking chill. Seriously, we do this all the time. We see somebody and we think, oh, that guy's a star. Oh, I've got to have that guy. Oh, that guy's going to be incredible. Why isn't that guy got the belt? Why isn't he the number one contender? Why isn't he in the main events? And so WWE responds by sticking him in the main event too early, without the proper build, without the, you know, the sort of, without the dossier of work, so to speak. And what happens? People just shit on it because they're given too much too early. And that's going to be the case a little bit with Velveteen Dream. If you just chuck him straight now, admittedly, I know he has got a decent level of work, and if he hadn't got injured, absolutely by now I would have said give him the belt. But there was a long time where he was out, almost a good year, and he needs time to rebuild his stock and rebuild his, you know, his work rate and what he's got behind him before he goes after the title. I just think, he's been back like 2-3 weeks, and we're just going to throw a title shot at him. I just think it's a recipe for disaster. But hey, Prove me wrong. Not always right, obviously. I like to think I am, but no, I'm joking. Ultimately, I just want to see people succeed, and I want wrestling to be a positive experience. And I don't want it to turn into one of these things where everyone just shits at him because he was thrown in too early. Velveteen Dream is a massive star. Nobody's denying that, and I love Velveteen Dream. Everybody knows that. I just want it to be done the right way and work the right way. Same with the Bianca Belair stuff. Bianca Belair, no question, is a future superstar of this company. But nobody needs to be shoehorned in rapidly just because they've had a good showing. You know, Keith Lee is a fine example of that. They're not going fucking nuts despite the Royal Rumble and the Survivor Series appearances. You know, Roman Reigns put him over big. Brock Lesnar made him look fantastic as well in that Royal Rumble, regardless of what Mark say. Ultimately, Brock Lesnar did a great job and made him look strong. And yeah, Keith Lee, you know, still working hard, having great matches, good promos, sitting in that mid-card nicely with that lovely NXT mid-card title, that North American title, one of the best looking belts as well. And I think they've done a great job of that. Nice to see Chelsea Green as well. Ran over Shotzi Blackheart a little bit too quickly for my liking, although I love the match itself. It's just too short. It was one of those matches where you thought, oh, this match is great, and then it just got cut off before you had a chance to get into it. But would have liked to have seen a little bit more of the women's stuff. Rhea Ripley wasn't on the show, although we had that lovely promo of her, you know, talking about how, you know, she was sitting in a stadium basically for WrestleMania, the stadium in Tampa, and talking about her big WrestleMania match and how people compared her to Charlotte and stuff. And good stuff, you know, stuff that you can throw in the promotion package and, you know, just hype the match a little bit more. So that's fine. But there wasn't a great deal of the women's DNA in this, despite the fact they opened with the cage match. And I think that was my problem, really. I wanted more of the cage match, and I wanted it to be in a more prominent position. That's just me, personally. I just think that Dakota Kai and Tegan Nox, with the amount of build and with the amount of emotion and investment involved in it, should really have been given the main event. But that being said, I loved the ending of their match as well. It was a highly competitive, highly physical match, and I loved that bit where she got trapped in between the cage door and the cage. I think that's fucking awesome. Haven't seen it done like that before. I remember on a Manic Mondays we were talking about how Edge and Christian, they had this wonderful steel cage match when they were in England for Insurrection, I believe, during the Invasion angle, and just talking about how brilliant it was that they finished the match with such an innovative way. And this was the same thing. Really loved it, and I really like the use of Raquel Gonzalez as well. I think she's excellent. Don't really care for the smarky nonsense that NXT fans have to keep throwing out there with the "Who are you" chants and, you know, "No you don't" and all this kind of stuff, and "No one likes you." Just really petty, childish chants, you know. And when you're out there on social media and all these things acting holier than thou, probably want to be a bit more inventive. But, you know, it is what it is. We did get our house chant, Swerve's house, in the middle of our street, which I thought was fucking phenomenal, so it's not all bad. So I'm not going to shit on the fans entirely, but yeah, I just wish the fans would kind of, I don't know, be a little bit more invested instead of trying to get themselves over. And I know it makes me sound like an old man, but there are moments where I just think, oh, wind it in, would you? Like, just enjoy what you're watching. You're getting the very best of WWE's format. You know, this is the best show easily out of the three. You know, Raw is very good at the moment, but NXT I think is still better. And yeah, just enjoy it. Just enjoy it. I mean, next week they're coming from the Performance Center as well. Love the stuff with Gargano, by the way, with Mauro Ranallo. I thought this was a big hit, this NXT. Really built itself nicely. And with WrestleMania season coming, they can't afford to be lackluster. They can't afford to be lazy or lethargic in the way they deliver their programming. And ultimately, I thought they did a wonderful job with that. On the flip side, you got AEW. You know, I'm not one of these people who gives a shit about the ratings. I know AEW has been kind of giving them a walloping lately, and when I say walloping, I mean, you know, they've won a lot in a row. It's not like they've been winning by a huge margin, but they have been winning. It doesn't really matter because I can watch both, so I don't really give a shit. So spare me the whole, you know, no, well, AEW's won this many, or oh, NXT's clearly got a better program and then it's only losing by like 90,000 viewers. Nobody cares. Nobody with a brain cares anyway. If you're literally sitting there the next day going, oh, what were the ratings for yesterday? Who gives a shit? It's not 1999 anymore. I'm sorry. I hate to break it to you. Leave the Attitude Era where it was. And that's coming from an older wrestling fan. You know, I'm in my 30s and I remember the Attitude Era very fondly, but I don't care about the ratings. Dynamite was really good. I really enjoyed Dynamite. Mostly because Pac and Lucha Brothers got together and then held a Death Triangle, and I creamed my knickers because, come on, baby, it's my 3 favourite wrestlers in one faction. I was like, oh my god, fucking give me some more of this shit. Loved it so much. Looking forward to seeing where that goes. Hopefully it's going to be a lot more serious. Not hugely happy with another faction. You've got this kind of Nightmare Collective. You've got the Elite that kind of cross over with them. You've got the Dark Order, SCU, Jurassic Express. A lot of factions. MJF's gang with Butcher and a Blade as well. I just think, Jesus, another faction. But that being said, this is a high quality faction. And I like the look of it. It has to be said. Jericho obviously taking a hiatus, judging from what he said this week. He said obviously if Moxley wasn't standing, he would leave for 60 days, take a 60-day break. And that's essentially what happened in the main event. Great main event. Darby Allin once again proving why he's such a huge star. Going out there, working against Jericho and Sammy Guevara in a handicap situation. And working so beautifully and prominently. He really is a superstar. We've said this before, but Darby Allin, he's got huge, and I mean huge potential. And what I love so much is I listened to his podcast with Jericho on Talks Jericho. Listening to him talking about creative freedom, creative control, how even at such a young age he's gone through so much, and he spoke so eloquently and with clarity about why he loved being at AEW, because there was no kind of pushback, there was no ability, people weren't forcing him into a hole or shoehorning him into a corner or making him work a certain creative style. At AEW, people get a massive amount of creative control, and I'm about to talk about that with the MJF incident. But I think the one thing I love about AEW and watching it is that kind of freedom that the stars get, that the wrestlers get. You saw it with Moxley's Impassioned promo. You saw great competitive matches across the board. Would have liked to have seen a little bit more. Again, gotta say, one thing that really pissed me off, they really did not do the women's division justice once again. You've got to do better. Unless they've just given up at this point, which I'm sure they haven't. I mean, right now I've got the TV on and it's got the screensaver for Netflix, and right now I'm looking at Glow, an image of that, and I know this seems quite apropos, but I'm just looking at it and thinking, come on, you look at what they were doing, and that's a TV series about wrestling. Put more emphasis on your women's wrestlers. Put more emphasis on their storylines. Give them the ability to be on the mic more. And also, this Britt Baker stuff, you found something different for her to do, but it's fucking boring already. It's the same thing every week. Oh, she's got shit teeth. Oh, hi Tony, Starbucks. Nobody cares. Be better. Be interesting. Be fresh with your material, and use that opportunity to do better. And stop putting her on commentary every week and not really doing anything. She doesn't seem to wrestle much, although she was on a match that I believe they recorded for AEW Dark before the pay-per-view. I think they need to do better, and they need to work harder to get their women's division over. I think there is a lot more they could be doing, and they're not doing nearly enough. And they're quite happy to throw... John Moxley, the opening promo, and Jericho coming out and giving him the business and whatnot, that was about 10 minutes or so. Then they had the 20-minute main event with Moxley getting jumped, and Guevara, and Darby Allin kind of going the distance by himself. That took up a quarter of the show. That's fine. I don't mind that. But you could only give the women, 5-10 minutes maximum? Piss poor out of a 2-hour show. I mean, it's, WWE has 3-hour Raws. And it's inexcusable when they give the ladies a sixth of that, which is half an hour. So it's absolutely inexcusable that you can only give 5 minutes or 5 or 10 minutes to the women on a 2-hour show. They need more time. Without the TV, without the promo time, they can't get over. The audience are not going to be invested. And you saw that with Statlander versus Nyla Rose on the weekend. It was a great match between two quality wrestlers, but nobody gave a shit. The crowd were into it as much as they could be, but they could be into that a lot more, and that got the most lackluster reaction of any match. And ultimately that's because you haven't booked your women's wrestling properly. I don't want to go on a massive tangent about it, but do better by the women's wrestling. You know how passionate we are. Anyone listening will know that I in particular, I'm super passionate about women's wrestling, interviewed a women's wrestler today, got another women's wrestler coming on for an interview soon. I take it very seriously because I believe that, and I really believe that in this day and age, women's wrestling is absolutely on par with men's wrestling, and intergender wrestling is exciting as well. And I think AEW had a real chance to set themselves apart by saying, hey, we're going to do intergender wrestling. Never mind what WWE does. Never mind what anyone else does. We're going to do intergender wrestling. We're going to make things far more exciting. You got to say, Impact has completely wiped the floor with AEW when it comes to their women's division. And they haven't got that big a women's division, but they have got stars in Jordan Grace, Taya Valkyrie, and Tessa Blanchard. And they've been ahead of the curve, and they've said, fuck it, we're going to make our main title essentially gender neutral. And Tessa Blanchard winning it is fantastic. And I see pathetic, insecure men screaming on Instagram and whatnot about, oh, it's not realistic that a woman won the heavyweight championship. Last time I checked, there was a women's belt for a reason. You know what? So what? Like, it's a women's... Great, mate. There's also an Intercontinental title. So what we're suggesting is that in WWE, you're not allowed to go for the Intercontinental title if you're a certain level. It's just dumb. I really don't understand that premise. Like, it doesn't offend anybody. And people saying, oh, this is why Impact shit. Actually, no. A lot of Impact's problems stem from other issues. But the one thing they are doing well is building their women's division. And if AEW want an example of how to do better, they should be paying attention to that. But other than that, I thought AEW Dynamite was excellent. Really enjoyed it. Thought the main event was good fun. Really love seeing Darby Allin flourish as the star that he's going to be. I think, I've seen Darby Allin in person. He's just got a vibe about him that's very different to any other wrestler. But for the first time in many weeks, I have to say I preferred NXT. Only slightly, but I thought NXT was a slightly better show. I think the overall quality of the product was just a little bit more consistent. I'm not really one who cares about Jake Hager versus QT Marshall, for instance, and these, ridiculous brawls. But yeah, the two things that will shock people a little bit. First of all, I thought NXT was better this week. And second of all, really enjoyed Hangman Page on Dynamite this week. And I know people have been giving me stick and saying, oh, you need to go easier on the angle and not take it so seriously. And this week I loved it. I loved the fact he just came strolling down. He had his shirt and his trousers on, looking like a pristine cowboy. He's got his pint in his hand, and he just casually saunters into the ring in the inner circle, like, what are you doing? And he's just like, I'm cool, just having my beer, just ignore me. And he just slowly puts it down and then jumps them, attacks them, and then just casually fucks off with about 6 or 7 beers that he's stolen off the crowd afterwards. Thought that was really funny. Ultimately, I actually think that the biggest problem with this gimmick is that it's too serious. I think it should be more funny. I think it should just be hilarious. If you're going to have this hilarious stuff where he comes out with a beer and the crowd obviously fucking adore it, cowboy shit chants, the crowd erupts every time he comes down. It's definitely made him far more interesting than he's ever been. And I do like what he's doing with it. I just think that it lacks a bit of direction. And ultimately, like I've said so many times, I think it hijacks the tag team division. But for this isolated week, thought it was really funny. Really enjoyed that segment. Really, really liked it. Loads to get into on both shows that I really enjoyed. But I did think that NXT was just slightly better for me. But obviously it's subjective, isn't it, guys? And also, it doesn't matter if you like both and watch both. We say this so often. Stop fucking crying about it. So yeah, NXT, slightly better than Dynamite. Before we go, wanted to touch on the MJF subject quickly because people were losing their shit. MJF flipped off a kid, 7-year-old kid. It's as simple as that. I'm sure you've all seen it by now. This guy bought a ticket or a slot for his son to see MJF. As the kid went over there, he was with Wardlow as well, and I thought it was brilliant that he was getting Wardlow to sign things because he just didn't want to talk to the fans. Thought it was very funny. And while the kid's standing there, MJF just sticks a middle finger in his face. Big fuck you to this 7-year-old kid who looked mortified and walked off crying. I hate to sound like an absolute dickhead, but I have zero sympathy whatsoever. I sound like Vince McMahon. I have zero sympathy for that 7-year-old. That 7-year-old screwed that 7-year-old. No. Come on. These wrestlers have creative license. MJF in particular has creative license. What fucking winds me up is these people seem to think that they're entitled to dictate how these people should react. No, absolutely not. This guy came out afterwards, said that he thinks that the wrestler should be held more accountable, that this guy should have, that MJF should have shown a little bit more respect for his son and things. I just thought, fuck off, mate. I know that sounds rude. Ultimately, you've got a completely free ride out of Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes is going to invite you to a show, you get the VIP experience. I think you've actually done very well, and I don't think Cody Rhodes needed to do that. And I admire Cody Rhodes for coming out and saying, from a creative standpoint, we're not going to tell MJF what to do, and when you book an opportunity to meet MJF, you should not expect him to be all sunshine and lollipops. What's the biggest thing we fucking moan about with wrestling? One of the big things that Nick Payne always brought up when he was on this podcast was that he hates the fact that wrestlers don't maintain their characters. That if you're a heel, you should be a heel. You shouldn't, go on Twitter every 5 minutes and be like, oh, hey guys, how's it going? Had a great weekend wrestling. Yeah, even though you're a bad guy on a show, just being a nice guy. Here's a guy committed to his character more than anyone else on earth, and MJF. That's why MJF is one of the best heels in the world. Not necessarily because he has the best content, although he is excellent at what he does. It's because he's the most committed. He's the one who's willing to do quite literally anything. And I said last week, and I believe that's what I said on the AEW Revolution review that we did over the weekend, which you can still check out if you want, with Carl. I said that I truly believe he would whip his dick out and piss in your face if he could. Because he does not give a shit. He will do anything to ensure that his heel character, which... with all likelihood is probably just him being himself, because if you're that consistent, chances are you must be a bit of a bellend. But I don't care. He's a heel. He's the ultimate bad guy. He's AEW's premier villain, other than Jericho. He's not really a villain, and he's too cool to be a villain at this point, Jericho. And he's doing an incredible job at it, and he's dedicated to it. And if a 7-year-old kid and his father want to kick off because they got a middle finger, boo fucking who? And when MJF tweeted and said cry about it, kind of in agreement with him. Can't have a cry about it. Be offended. So what? You're entitled to be offended? That doesn't mean you're entitled to something because you're offended. That's the big problem here. And as Nick Payne always says, offence is taken, not given. That's how it is. So yeah, I'm sorry if I sound really harsh, but I really don't care. You should have expected more. Don't tug on Superman's cape and expect him to just ignore you. And it's the same premise with MJF. You booked a slot for your 7-year-old child to meet MJF, who is easily the most inflammatory person in wrestling. And as a father, you should have done your due diligence. You should have known just by checking out all of his previous commitments. I mean, this is a guy who mocked a guy for being in a wheelchair, for being handicapped. Did you honestly think he was just going to let your kid roll up to him and say hello and he was going to be pleased as punch to see him? Of course he fucking wasn't. Behave yourself. And ultimately, it's a middle finger. There are far worse things going on in the world. So if you've got the time and the ability to be thoroughly pissed off because your kid had a little cry because someone gave him a middle finger, I don't know. Maybe fucking look at life a little bit differently. Just saying. Sorry if that offends people, but that's my opinion. And I'm not changing it because that's the way the podcast is run. Steve Austin's back next week. Fantastic news. He'll be back on Raw. And the NWO are on SmackDown this week. That's very fucking weird. Don't understand why, but I dread... Kevin Nash looks in amazing shape. I've seen him on Twitter, but Scott Hall must be fucking knackered at this point, the poor soul. And also Hulk Hogan as well, going, brother Jack, dude, brother. I don't care, mate. I don't want to see your leathery basketball-like exterior on my TV, but I will check out SmackDown if I'm awake and see what they have to offer. But yeah, not particularly enthralled by anything they're doing on SmackDown, and it's not helped by the fact that Goldberg is your champion on there, and Goldberg versus Reigns, I couldn't care less. I really couldn't.